Hello, my name is Chris. I like to talk about pop culture, and this is my Wandavision video. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell you there are going to be spoilers in this video. Although I will say the first half of it, I am going to speak a little less about spoilery things, and a little more about like Disney and the MCU in general. So, if you are avoiding WandaVision spoilers, that is not this video. Have fun. Go watch it and then come back and watch my video to get my opinions on it, because my opinions are clearly the most important and the correct ones, right? I just want to say I have a philosophy, right? Many a philosophy, which is important because of that last episode. But my philosophy is that if a lot of people or a giant group of people really like a thing, whether that be a song, whether that be a movie franchise, whether that be a theme park, whether that be like a food or whatever, right? If a lot of people like a thing, it is worth looking into on an intellectual and artistic level, right? That's the point of this channel, that I look into popular things that are trending and go, okay, what part of this thing do people connect to? What's the connection here for this, right? So when I cover things like the MCU, or if I ever eventually cover like Star Wars, or when I cover things like BTS or, big popular artists, right? The thought that's running in the back of my mind is, why is this massively popular? And what about it is good that people connect to? I'm not looking to disparage anything. I'm looking like, what about it is good that people connect to, right? Even things I don't like. What about this is good that I can see people connecting to, even if it's not to my taste, right? And I also want to make it clear, like, things that I actually like or don't like, because I do think that's going to end up coloring my commentary. Do that. I'm doing this because I think there is a counterculture of, oh, the popular thing is bad, and liberal Hollywood elites are trying to control us, and like, that's not the case. No, like, sometimes things are just good. Ben Shapiro. So all of that being said, I am a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I saw the first Iron Man when I was 12. I still remember seeing the first Iron Man in theaters, and I have seen nearly every single other MCU movie since, except for the first two Thors. Now, that I think is a problem with myself, and I also think is a problem in general. The reason why it's a problem that I have seen every MCU movie since 2008 and will continue. I enjoy MCU and I enjoy watching the MCU, and I will continue. Like, I'm not going to suddenly stop because of the things I'm about to say, but that is the reason, because I watched MCU from a 12 and I will continue to watch until I can't anymore. That is the reason Disney brought out Marvel Studios and Lucasfilm and now Fox Studios, right? Disney's always flirted with the idea for creating content for an older audience. They didn't want to infringe on their own family-friendly brand. And so they kind of wanted to expand, right? And they tried and stopped for a while, and there was a lot of starting and stopping, but they finally got it with Marvel's Lucasfilm and now the Fox Studio properties, right? They own things like The Simpsons. They own things like the X-Men. I think they even have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles now. So they don't have SpongeBob. So those are your options for your children: a Disney property or SpongeBob. For now, I definitely think one of Disney's goals, and that millennials and Gen Z, like me, I'm 96, so I'm somewhere in there. Millennials and Gen Z are the experiment generations for Disney, and that Disney will be able to have our attention and be able to show us different properties and get us to put money into them throughout our entire lifespan. So there are Gen Z kids, not even, they're me, right? I have watched Disney stuff and Disney owned properties from when I was a baby, when I was born, up until now, and I will continue to do so. I think that's their goal. Their goal is to be able to keep your attention span for your entire lifespan. From your first breath to your last breath, that's what they want from you. And it worked for me, and this is a problem because Disney is a monopoly, because they just own so many media properties, and it's very hard to compete with a company that owns that many media properties. And it's also a problem. Okay, so it's a problem because, listen, not to be like conspiracy theory, right? But if a private corporation can guarantee that they have the eyeballs and the attention of somebody for their entire lifespan, if they can guarantee that they can have a generation's attention for an entire lifespan, from birth to death, that means they can push whatever content and art they see fit. It will be very hard to compete, like I just said. They could just shut down and buy other projects that they don't agree with, and then you can eventually push Disney values onto everybody, and we wouldn't really have anything else to question it, because it would be the only thing that we really see and really have access to. As far as shutting out and buying out other projects, we've already seen this. Disney is shutting down Blue Sky Studios, which is the studio that created Ice Age. So instead of taking the Ice Age brand, which is very popular, and helping incorporate it into Disney, they're just cutting it off. It's bad for competition. Don't come here and tell me, oh, no, that is, Disney being that big is bad for competition. So, and I know that explanation is a little simplified, and this is not the point of the video. I know that's a little bit of a simplified explanation of the problem, especially because we have social media, but like, they have presence in the social media scene too, especially if people like me are going to talk about Disney properties, and then like, only now I'm not only speaking about Disney properties, but you know, it's like it's a bit of a problem. I personally would like to see Disney broken up. That being said, I'm still going to talk about with WandaVision right now. And I just wanted to make it clear, like, that's my opinion on Disney. Like, I don't think Marvel Studios should be a part of, I think that it should be broken up. I don't even think the Fox deal show went through. I'm surprised that it did. But yeah, so that's my opinion on Disney. I just want to make that clear. Every time I do a video about a Disney property, I am probably going to do that whole disclaimer spiel. Disney's a monopoly. I think it should be broken up because they control too much intellectual property, and they can have our eyes and ears from birth to death, and that's not a good idea. It's not a good idea to have a corporation in front of your eyeballs your entire life. It's not. And while I can be diverse in my media consumption, the 12-year-old with strict parents. So now back to WandaVision and MCU stuff. So since I've been a fan of the MCU forever, and I really mean forever, one of the things that the MCU did and why it's so successful that other movie franchises couldn't do, DC, I'm looking at you, they created the same effect as like a popular TV show. So the example I like to bring up the most is Lost. Hi, editing Christina. I don't know why I brought up Lost when I could have brought up Game of Thrones. That's how little I care about Game of Thrones. I'm a little too young for the Lost craze. I was like 9 or whatever, and I was not watching Lost at 9. I'm sorry. I watched Heroes at 9, though. The thing is that you always had to see the next MCU movie in theaters, right? Like, when everyone came out, you had to go and see it so you could talk about it at the office or at school, right? I'm not surprised that they're trying to move into a TV format, because that's kind of the format that they mimicked from the beginning, right? Especially because every movie kind of had a formula, right? Like, every movie, you know, you knew there was always going to maybe be an end scene. You knew that we're gonna follow the Iron Man 1 formula, basically. There's like 5 versions of that movie in the MCU. So yeah, like it's very, they're movies, and I think they're movies that I enjoy, and they're movies that a lot of people enjoy, so that means there's something worth exploring there. But it does kind of work like a serial TV show. They had tried TV before with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and that kind of section, but Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. never really tied in the movies or affected the movie universe, right? It wasn't a symbiotic relationship between Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the movies, right? So, like, the movie universe could affect Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? Because in Captain America Winter Soldier, when S.H.I.E.L.D. fell, like, that needed to be reflected in the TV show. But the TV show, what happened in the TV show never affected the MCU. And the same for the Netflix Daredevil, Jessica Jones, that kind of area of the universe. They did kind of reference like Avengers 1, but it was very much always really separate from everything else, right? And so that was kind of something that like turned me off, because like I really like the movies in the movie universe, but if they were really going to get into it, if they were really going to get into this like multimedia thing, you know, I would like to actually see it be multimedia, where I would need to go to different places to get different parts of the story, right? And so I want these Disney Plus TV shows of the MCU to actually affect the wider universe within the movies, right? So the things that happened in WandaVision, even though they're pretty self-contained, right? Like, I want it to affect the movies, right? Like, I don't want all of the character growth that Wanda did here to go away in Doctor Strange, or to, like, I want it to be kind of reflected in whatever movie she's in next. And, like, the reason I want this is because I ultimately really enjoy media that's complicated and I have to pick apart, and be encouraged to see the next one, right? I want it to be multimedia. I want to go to a couple different places to get it. Like, I want it to be big and complicated, and I want to, like, be like, oh my god, like, well, this and this can happen. I want to theorize. I also want to be really satisfied. I think that's what the MCU is really good at. The MCU is really good at giving satisfactory endings. I've never been upset with an ending in the MCU, which is different because the piece of media that made me like this was reading Homestuck when I was 15, and that's done irreversible damage to my psyche. Wanda is one of my favorite characters. She's always been one of my favorite characters, even from when she was introduced. Bucky Barnes is my other favorite character, but his show is next, so check back in when his show is over. And Wanda, okay, there are two things I really like about Wanda. One is that she is a very hashtag girl boss, and she's the most powerful character in the MCU. And I love that other heroes were always afraid of her and were always trying to push her back, and that she always pushed back against that boundaries, right? That's very reflective of, like, real life. I don't know if you know this, but, like, women go through that all the time, right? We all have these crazy like, magic powers, and then, like, people are like, oh, you're too powerful, you shouldn't let out your crazy magic powers. Then you're like, no, actually, fuck you, I'm going to, right? And I think the show actually did do a lot for her character in explaining some of her motivations, and also moving her forward past some of these things that defined her in the previous section of the MCU, right? I'm counting posts. I know there are phases, and we're in phase 4 or whatever right now, but, like, I'm counting everything from Iron Man 1 to Endgame as one section, and now we're in the next section. I also love a really good anti-hero, and I think Wanda Maximoff is a really good anti-hero, and we don't really get a whole lot of good women anti-heroes in media at all. And this is one of the things that, this is going to be another just theme throughout all of my videos, right? We don't have a lot of morally dubious women in media. Most of us are kept pretty pure of intention. So either we're the good guys or we're the bad guys. There's no really, like, in between, or really complicated in between, right? I can think it's getting a little better now, but there aren't, like, growing up, there weren't really a lot of women that made questionable decisions on TV or whatever, right? And listen, like, one of these days, right, as I learn to get better with scripting and editing and putting together bigger pieces, right? Even though I already pump out hour-long videos that are about nothing. I definitely want to do a video about how there's this new trope in media that I'm seeing that I don't think anyone's really spoke about, but it's about when people make women morally gray, and we have women that make morally gray characteristics. I'm specifically thinking of, like, Annalise from How to Get Away with Murder. That's the TV show name. When women characters make morally gray decisions, right, it's often justified as something terrible happened in this woman's past, so she makes these crazy decisions because she's been affected by this thing, right? A lot of times it's something gross and violent. It's a word I'm not going to say here, but a lot of times it's something gross and violent. It's, like, painted, and it's, like, a lot of shows, I just don't think that people think about this, but when you show, like, a woman that's had a very traumatic event happen to her and now she makes questionable decisions, it's like, oh, this traumatic event tainted her. It tainted her and her intentions. So now we don't really know if she's really good or not, right? Like, and it reads a kind of way, right? So that will be a fun thing to explore in the future. There will definitely be many a video on that. But I want you to know that that's a trope. Morally gray women, anti-hero women, are often justified in the script, in their media, by having terrible backstories and basically being attacked. And I hate that trope because we should just let women be morally gray. We should just let women make bad decisions and not necessarily be painted as completely evil. The same way you would for, like, morally gray male characters. I'm trying to think of a morally gray dude character. In the MCU, that would be Bucky. It would be Scott Lang. It would be Tony Stark. It would be Captain America. That's a different argument. But Cap is definitely, like, the MCU paints Cap as this, like, moral centerpiece, like he's good, and that was very Joss Whedon, like, and they kind of just kept that, like, oh, like he always made good decisions. I don't think Captain America made very good decisions the entire time, but neither did Tony. Peter Quill, right? Like, there are characters in the MCU that are morally gray. Scarlet Witch is one of them. Basically, Wanda, after the snap, right, she was brought back to life. Vision wasn't, because Vision was actually permanently dead. We know that before the show starts, right? And she becomes so lost in her grief, Wanda, that she goes to the place that her and Vision were going to build a forever home and creates the hex out of her grief and pain and loneliness. And inside the hex, she can act out her happy-go-lucky sitcoms with a version of Vision that she created, or the version of Vision she has in her head, and children that she made up for them. Right? Casual. She does this after she was told she couldn't bury Vision's body, which also, part of the reason I love the MCU is that these characters are not rational characters. Like, I don't, like, if you sit down and you think about, like, why these characters made the decisions they do, you find out that they're often driven by their emotions in the moment and not by, like, actual rational thought. So, like, in this TV show, of course the government was not going to let Wanda bury billions of dollars of the most expensive mineral and metal and rare metal, as far as they know, in universe. Because it used to be her husband. Like, no, that's valuable material that in Civil War, Tony Stark probably signed over to the government. Right? That's why Vision was with her in Avengers Tower, right? Like, she had to have been, like, in Civil War, right? She blew up that building by accident. Wanda blew up that building by accident. So a lot of Civil War is Wanda and Vision kind of just chilling in Avengers Tower, because those are two very powerful people that people are very afraid of, right? They end up joining Cap's side of that fight because Wanda is like, I don't want people to be afraid of just my power. And Vision is like, I am a sentient being now. Like, you can't control me. I'm not a weapon. I'm not just a weapon, you know? That's why, you see, I'm so into this stuff. I'm so into this stuff. And Wanda, like, again, like, that whole thing with Wanda in Civil War, like, being, like, held, like, being, like, you can't, like, you're grounded, like, you can't leave because you're too powerful. And, like, it's very complicated. And you know what? Like, a lot of people, that rings true for a lot of women, right? A lot of women are told, oh, like, hold back, like, don't be too much, don't show your whole self, right? Like, no, what, like, fuck, be too much. Own your power. Like, at the end of the show, Wanda is learning about and owning her power, and I wish more #MCU is feminist. It's not. Another thing I like to do is take the context of the show, so whatever context of this show that we're watching. This show comes out it ends a year into quarantine, a year after the coronavirus started. And this is a show about working through extreme grief, right? Of losing everyone that you loved and being truly alone. This is a show about isolation. This is a show about an entire town trapped inside, away from the family, feeling the pain feeling the same pain of that isolation and grief, right? Because all of the townspeople told Wanda, we can feel your pain, like, you're torturing us. Which is also, like, that's the anti-hero thing, right? She tortured an entire town. Listen, girl boss, gaslight, gatekeep. That's what was going on. This is a show ultimately about escapism, and using escapism to ignore or work through your problems. And, like, listen, like, we all do that. All of us do that. I'll go first, kids. So, like, when I try to fall asleep at night, I will make up fake stories in my head about whatever, or I'll, like, start, like, scripting out videos in my head or whatever to use that to try to, like, convince me to fall asleep. And there's definitely, like, there's tons of MCU fanfiction, right? Tons of it, right? there's definitely a fanfic division somewhere in Disney, because Wanda was essentially living out her like little slice of life version of her and Vision's life, where they just lived in a house and had two kids and it was all normal, right? And didn't matter that they were crazy power, that they had crazy powers, right? She could just put herself in these sitcoms and live out this happy-go-lucky funny life that she wanted to. And honestly, at a time where we're all trapped inside and needed a little bit more escapism, needed somewhere to go because we couldn't physically go anywhere or do anything. I think it's neat that they started with this TV show, that they started with WandaVision, and that they used this idea for the TV show. So, I said this on TikTok. I would have used this point on TikTok. So if you're from TikTok, say hello, leave a comment, subscribe. I'll know if you don't. The other thing too, because this was about in the hex, out the hex, and inside the hex was a TV show, and it was kind of like a TV show and in the TV show, there was a lot of interesting use of fourth wall breaking and aspect ratios that I thought was really interesting and that I really liked. Like seeing, there was this one scene where she walks out of the hex, right? And so you could see it go from full screen to, what is it, 16:9, what movies are usually shot in, and you could see the borders coming in and out, because that's what it was. She was going from her own little universe into the regular universe outside and telling them, leave me alone. Just leave me alone. So as far as villain goes, I have nothing to say really about either of them. I will say that I did see a tweet saying that MCU is military propaganda, which is a little misleading because the MCU hates the military. MCU is really more like Reaganomics libertarianism propaganda than like military propaganda, because everyone that works for the military is usually evil with few exceptions, right? Like Fury and Maria, like they both good. Agent Coulson, he was like a good guy, but like Hydra had infiltrated SHIELD. Sword, Hayward was the head of SWORD, and he was trying to kill Wanda and send a new version of Vision out there. Like he was like Marvel is not pro-military. It's pro-libertarianism. It's not pro-military. I also have nothing to say about Agatha other than I liked her and they left her alive for a reason, and her song was catchy as hell. I will say having Darcy and Agent Woo in there were nice surprises. I hope that there are constants throughout all of these TV shows, so I hope that Darcy and Agent Woo show up again. In Falcon and the Winter Soldier and in Loki and whatever else. I don't even know what else I have planned, but in whatever else I have planned. Monica Rambeau. So I had to look this up, but Monica Rambeau was the daughter of Lieutenant Rambeau in Captain Marvel. So now she's all grown up and she's her own member of SWORD. And she's been grounded, so she can't go up to space. And at the end, there's a whatever alien thing that shows up and is like, oh, someone needs to see you up there, and it's very obvious. It's obvious to me who it is. I really like her character. I'm very interested. Like, I don't know what powers she has. But, and I also have not looked it up, as you can tell. But I really liked her character. I liked how she was always on the side of Wanda. She was always on the side of, like, no, like, we can talk her down. Like, there's no reason to go in with violence to try to kill her, to Hayward, because, you know, men are always destructive. She was always like, no, we can talk her down. And I like to think that because she had kind of better intentions, that when she pushed through the hex, that's why she was able to get her powers from Wanda's powers, or Wanda's powers activated her own powers, right? Because she wasn't there to hurt Wanda. She was there just to convince her to, like, let it go. So, that was nice. Okay, and now for our last surprise. Evan Peters. So Evan Peters plays Quicksilver in the X-Men universe, right? And he showed up as Quicksilver here. And that sent everybody into a flurry. Like, it sent me into a flurry, right? And I was like, oh, is it happening? So, because Disney owns the X-Men now, there's a lot of speculation around how is that going to be incorporated into the MCU. I am personally of the I like the idea of the multiverse happening. So, like, because we have multiverse stuff coming up, because we have Multiverse of Madness, I think it's called, right? The Doctor Strange movie, like, it's very clear to me that at some point a portal is going to be, or something is going to be opened up into the X-Men universe, and that'll allow Disney to not recast all these X-Men again, like they did to Spider-Man 7 times, right? And to just have that storyline continue on in its own separate universe, and let the MCU storyline continue on in its own separate universe, and have it only cross over when necessary. I do also think the next big Avengers movie thing is going to be Avengers versus the X-Men. We don't know because Endgame just came out like 2-ish years ago. So it's going to take them some time to build up. Again, it took them some time to build, like, when you watched Iron Man 1, did you know we were going to go to Endgame? You didn't. We didn't even know Thanos was a thing until Avengers 1. The first one. So, it's going to take them some time to build up. I would personally like to see that version of Quicksilver still stay relevant or still be Quicksilver. It can just be a different universe version of Quicksilver. I remember when he showed up, first of all, it was spoiled to me. I saw it, my best friend sent me a tweet, and I was like, why the fuck did you send me that? Like, why? I didn't know that he showed up. I didn't know they were doing this. When he first showed up, I thought that it was kind of like, that they were starting the multiverse thing, that the Hex wasn't necessarily like a thing in capturing the town, but that maybe she had found a way to travel dimensions herself in her grief. And so she was kind of maybe in, like, her and all these people were in between dimensions, and it was maybe a portal, and that's how Quicksilver was able to come in, but it just ended up being a boner joke. Which is fine, which is actually kind of pretty brilliant, and I know that there were a lot of people disappointed, but I wasn't disappointed in that, because I felt like it was really early to bring multiverse stuff in. It was really early to bring the X-Men in, and it was like, there was no way they have a plan for this, or that their plan for that is ready to be executed right now. So, I wasn't disappointed in it. I hope he comes back. He's very popular. He was more popular than, I would say they were kind of like the same popular, but I know I like his version of the character better than I like Aaron Taylor Johnson's. Sorry, Aaron. I hope he comes back. I also hope this multiverse thing works out. I thought they did time travel kind of okay. Am I happy time travel exists in the MCU? Not really. But you know what? Like, now what's going to happen is, because you know how comics are, there are different storylines and different universes that are all happen in parallel to each other, and then there are crossovers. So that's what they're going to do. They've done the TV thing. Now they're going to actually literally do the comic thing, where they're going to end up joining these universes together. If they introduce the multiverse into the MCU, and then they introduce the multiverse into, like, the DCEU, this will be crazy. I'm telling you, I'm speaking crazy right now. But I could also see like an Avengers versus Justice League type thing situation too. That would be insane. We thought the first Avengers was crazy. I don't know if you guys remember, or if you kids are even old enough to remember, but I remember when the first Avengers came out, it was a very ambitious project. The movie could have been very bad, but it ended up being kind of okay. Better, hindsight's 2020, like Joss Whedon is ugh. But as far as that movie goes, that was an okay movie and did what it needed to do pretty well by bringing together all of these heroes, right? And then Endgame also did what it needed to do very well by bringing together all of these characters. The Russo brothers are geniuses. Those are my thoughts on WandaVision. I liked it. I will be watching Captain America and Winter Soldier. I hope that Wanda still gets her moments in the movies too, right? I don't necessarily just want her to be like one and done. Like, I want her to show up in other movies. She'll probably end up, I think she's been confirmed for Doctor Strange. Don't quote me on that. I think she's been confirmed for Doctor Strange though, so we'll see. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for watching. Next video is going to be Grammys recap, where I'll go over my predictions that I made in my prediction video, particularly regarding BTS, and then also all of the performances for the night. They have quite the lineup, by the way. Ben Wilson is the executive producer for James Corden, and he is executive producing the Grammys, and he got quite the lineup. There's Megan Thee Stallion, there's Harry Styles, there's Doja Cat, there's BTS. BTS got their performance, by the way. Thank God. Ben, the check is in the mail. Who else? There's just a ton of people. There's a lot of people performing. It's gonna be, I think it's a better lineup than has been in the past. So he is definitely he's doing okay, good, soon. So I will be watching. You will get a recap. Yeah. Like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me if you like the MCU. Tell me if I'm stupid for watching the MCU, because I probably am. Tell me if you connect it to Wanda. Have you ever trapped an entire town and forced them to feel your grief? I know I have. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. I love you.